Okay, so sign-on letters. So this is something that Beyond Plastics uses in almost every campaign that we do, is a sign-on letter. And the reason that we rely on these so heavily is because it's a really good way to show broad support for an issue, action, or idea. And it's also a really good tool for coalition building. So you're getting the other organizations that have political power, that have community power, and community buy-in to support whatever it is that you're expressing in the letter. So organizational sign-on letters are different than individual advocacy letter campaigns. So in an organizational sign-on letter, you don't have individuals signing the letter like you would with a petition. You would just have one letter that lays out a really strong argument, and then you get organizations to sign on. Usually people sign on behalf of their organizations. So like if Beyond Plastics was signing, either Judith would sign as the president of Beyond Plastics, or I would sign as the organizing director. You can also pair them with individual letter campaigns where you would give people a template letter that they can adapt, and then they submit that letter on their own time. So it's a little bit different, but we do use both of these. And then when you deliver the sign-on letter, you have all of the organizations that signed listed at the bottom. It just, has a visual impact for all of the support that your letter has. So the first thing to do for a sign-on letter is identify who you're going to address the letter to. And that will depend on the issue at hand. So for example, if your letter is about a local law to ban polystyrene, you might address it to the city council president and the city council members. If you're urging your local school board to not consider an artificial turf for a new field, you might address it to the members of your school board and the school superintendent. And you can also CC people that you're not addressing it to. So you could CC the school president, or the school principal, so that they can see that this letter exists. And if you're responding to a public comment period, which we do use sign-on letters for, the government agency will provide clear instructions about who to address it to and by when you need to submit your comments. So the bottom line is whoever you're addressing the letter to should be either directly responsible or have influence over the issue at hand. So drafting the letter, this is basically like writing a college paper or a thesis paper. So you have an introduction with a thesis statement. So you're opening with a paragraph that clearly states the issue and your position on the issue, and then you list the primary reasons why or why not you are supporting that position. And then you list those reasons, which you will expand on in the body paragraph. So your body of the letter is supporting arguments. So in the thesis paragraph, you're listing all of your reasons for either supporting or opposing an issue, and then you dedicate a paragraph at least to each of those reasons. For example, if your thesis statement is that you're opposed to the county approving a permit for a new waste incinerator because burning waste contributes to climate change, toxic pollution, and environmental injustice, you would have a full paragraph explaining why each of those negative impacts from waste incineration. Also include references. So we use lots and lots of citations because you're backing your argument up with facts and studies. So be sure to provide citations. I usually just do footnotes for any facts, figures, and claims that you're including in your argument. Also, solutions are important. So if your letter is opposing something, you should offer a better solution to the problem at hand if possible. So dedicate at least a paragraph to describing a better course of action that could be taken instead of building a new waste incinerator. Then in your closing, close your letter with a brief summary and urge the addressee to take action, and be specific about the desired outcome of the action that you are requesting. So restate what you're telling the person to do or the agency to do, i.e., we urge you to vote no on the proposal for a new waste incinerator. So consider, oh, I forgot the title in there. Oh, you can't see it because it's white. Oops. But it says, consider sharing your draft with key partners. So if you're working closely in a coalition, this ties back to being transparent with your allies about your positions on issues and who you're talking to and what you're trying to accomplish. So it might be prudent to share the draft of the letter with your allies, like your close allies who you know would support it, to get their consensus on what's in the letter. This can also slow up the process, so you may or may not do this. We do this sometimes. It just depends on the situation. So we do recommend that, though, recommend considering that. And then if you do have co-authoring organizations, you can include their logo at the top, and you can include them as a primary signer when you get to formatting your signatures. So formatting the top of your letter is very important. It's kind of like a cover letter. You'll want the name of the person that you're addressing the letter to, or the names of the people that you're addressing the letter to. Also include their title. So here we have Representative Paul Tonko, Representative Frank Pallone, and Speaker Nancy Pelosi. If applicable, include their organization, their address, the date of your letter, and also list anybody that you're CCing, but you're not addressing the letter to. So oftentimes when we submit a letter, we will CC a bunch of people for their information so that they know about it. So you want to be transparent to the people that you're addressing this letter to on who else is seeing the letter. Include a subject line at the top. We RE, whatever it is, the topic at hand, RE permit for new waste incinerator in Alameda County. And a greeting. So you would say, Dear Representative Pallone, or to whom it may concern, just depending on who you're addressing the letter to. You can also add your logo at the top of the letter or your letterhead. And if you have any co-authors that are writing this letter with you, you can include their logos as well. And it's just a great way to show that your letter has legitimacy as an organizational sign-on letter to include logos. Now, collecting signatures. This is what you need the most time for. You need at least 2 weeks to collect signatures for letters because it takes organizations time to read them and get permission to sign them. So we use Google Forms for collecting signatures. And the reason is it's really easy to collect signatures using Google Forms because they automatically generate a spreadsheet for you with all your signatures in one place. And it automatically updates the spreadsheet, and you can easily clean up duplicates. So if you've never used Google Forms before, it's really neat, and I'd be happy to do a whole separate Skillshare on how to do Google Forms. If you're doing a plastic-free July action, you're familiar with it by now. But the nice thing is you can add a header image in the Google form. You can put a headline there, and then in the body of the form where you're explaining what the form is, provide an explanation of what the letter is, instructions to sign on. So put in the form that you're only collecting organizational signatures, you're not accepting individual signers. Give a deadline for sign on, and choose a deadline that is at least a few days before you plan to submit the letter, because you need enough time to format the signatures and submit it. So you don't want it to be like the day that you plan to submit the letter to make the deadline. and also include either the entire text of the letter in the form or a link to read the letter so that all of the information to sign on is in one place. Then this is what it looks like in editor view. So if you own the form, this is what it looks like when you open it. You can easily tab over to see the responses that you get. And also you've got this little artist's palette right here. This is how you change the look of your form, the color. You can add the header here. With this arrow, you can share your form. So the link to share it, you can also add editors to your form if you want to share it with people who want to make changes to the form, etc. So when you click on that responses tab, you get this page where you see all of your responses listed by the question, and it's not easy to read it that way, but if you click on the little green button that kind of looks like a green Swedish flag, you get a spreadsheet of all of your answers, and it's organized for you. And so this is why we use Google Forms, and you can share this spreadsheet, you can download it. But this is super handy when you finally get to formatting your answers. Oh, I forgot to mention, when you are making the form, you want to ask for the person's first name, last name, their job title, their organization, ask if they're authorized to sign on behalf of their organization, and then you can also ask for their location, their mobile number, their email. You can ask for all those things, but you do want to make sure that you're getting their name, title, and organization, and whether they have permission to sign. And then later you can go and clean up any duplicates, and you can delete anybody who is not signing on behalf of an organization. So once your form and your letter are ready to go, you need to circulate it so that people can, organizations can start signing on. So make a list of all the organizations in your known world. It's really handy to do this in a separate spreadsheet. Usually we will make a list of all of the organizations that we know, all of the contacts that we know at that organization and their emails, and then we will divide and conquer. We'll say, okay, I'm going to email this person, and I'm going to email this group of people, this group of organizations. And it's just really easy to keep track by doing it this way of who you've already reached out to and who you've heard back from. The second thing that I really recommend is drafting a template email that you can just copy and paste for every organization. So this is the email that you're sending to organizations to invite them to sign on to your letter. So you're describing what your letter is, summarizing the issue at hand and why they should sign on, give them the deadline, give them the form link to sign your letter, the instructions to sign your letter, however it is that they're signing. And you can also add the letter itself as an attachment so that it's just easy. They have more than one way to read the letter. And then once you have a template email, it also helps you to avoid confusion because you have a solid outreach message. So every organization is getting the same message, a unified message from the authors of the letter. And it covers all the important points that each person should be making, so people aren't ad-libbing. I said this already, but give organizations at least 2 weeks to sign on, and plan to do a second round of outreach in that period. So you send it out a few days later or a week later, you send it again to the organizations that you haven't heard back from. Maybe you even call them and say, hey, did you see our letter? The deadline is August 1st. We really need you to sign on because this is an important public comment period. It's really important to reach out more than once because things do get lost in emails. And then do a final round of outreach 1 or 2 days before the deadline. Reiterate that the deadline is August 1st or whenever your deadline is, and ask people again to sign on. Then once the deadline passes, you can format your signatures. So you will go into your form, if that's what you're using, and download that spreadsheet of signers. You would clean up any duplicate signatures and any signatures that are not representing organizations, check for any typos and errors. And then when you are actually copying and pasting the organizations into your letter, which I can show you some examples of letters that we've done, you would list the authors first. So you'll list your signature first, anybody who co-authored. Then if you have any particularly notable organizations, you would list them next. And then the rest of the organizations we'll usually do in alphabetical order. So let's look at some examples. We have done a lot of sign-on letters. Let's do one that we did. Okay, here's our letter on the Clean Future Act, which is an act that would allow waste burning to be considered clean energy. I'll zoom in a bit. Okay, so here we have, we didn't put our logos at the top, but here we have the persons that this letter is addressed to. We have the date that we're submitting the letter, not the date that we wrote the letter. We have the subject line, and then we have the greeting. Then we have the body of our letter, which is explaining basically why burning waste is not clean energy. And then we have the signers. So in this particular letter, we've just done name, title, organization, and location. So we have copied and pasted these basically from that spreadsheet. And looks like we got several organizations signed on. Let's look at another one. Let's look at this Ohio River Valley Petrochem letter to the DOE. So this isn't one that Beyond Plastics wrote, but this is one that we signed. So the authors here have their logos at the top. I love the owl logo. We've got the date. We've got who the letter is addressed to. They've got several people that they're addressing this to. We've got the subject line and the greeting. Then we've got basically listing out all of the problems with petrochemicals. And notice all the citations here are in footnotes. And then this particular one, how did they format their signatures? Signed. Okay, so the main authors are signed first, and they are not listing the representatives from those organizations. They're just listing the names of the organizations. So they've put the main authors first, and then they're doing everybody else in alphabetical order. So that's just a different way of doing it. Both are legitimate, just depends on how you want to format your letter. And can I get back to slideshow? Okay, now we're not done yet. Now the letter is formatted, you need to deliver it. And you have 3 options for delivery. All are legitimate. You can email it, you can hand deliver it, or you can post it in the mail. Or if it's for a public comment, there might be an online form that you use to submit it. So just follow the instructions very clearly to the letter if you're submitting a public comment. This is a photo. I love this photo. I'm in Indiana right now. Last year, unfortunately, the legislature repealed long-standing bipartisan protections for Indiana wetlands. It was a very unpopular bill, the bill to repeal these long-standing protections. It had a lot of pushback, and this young man, his name is Leo, and he's 11 years old, did a signature drive to oppose this bill. He collected 35,000 signatures and delivered that huge stack of signatures in person to Indiana Governor Eric Holcomb in support of wetland protections. So he did his in person, got photos, he was in the Indy Star, and I think that huge stack of papers is very a very powerful image. And also note that he got pictures of the delivery, which is a good segue into my next point, which is when you deliver your letter, make sure that you're sharing it on social media. So get pictures, share the letter on social media, send out a press release with your letter. And if you need help writing a press release, we kind of cover it in the trainings. We have more details on how to write a press release on our website. But basically, you don't need to keep it to yourself. This isn't a private conversation between you and a government agency or a public official. This is public comment. So if you're going to do a press release, send the press a copy of the letter so that they have it. Post the letter on social media. Make sure you're tagging all the organizations that signed your letter so that they can repost your post or share it to their members. And you can also tag Beyond Plastics and we will repost it for you. And also just ask us to sign your letter, because I'm sure we would be happy to sign whatever it is that you're working on. So that's sign-on letters in 20 minutes. A really good skill to have. I hope that you all will do lots of sign-on letters. I spend a lot of time writing at Beyond Plastics. Any questions on how to do this particular skill?